Dr. Jackie's here, changing life loving you. Yeah, that's the groove, life loving you. Feel the truth, move, life loving you. It's all we do, come on through, it's just for you.
It's so funny. I noticed that a lot of times when my husband and I would get into a conflict, sometimes you'd be talking for like 20, 30 minutes, and then you look down and you're thinking like, you forget what you're even having a conflict over, right? And so I really make it a point to really try to de-escalate and to stay focused. That's the main thing, is to stay focused on what is it that we're talking about. And so sometimes I think that a technique that's really helpful is when there is a conflict to start and work your way backwards. What is it that you want? You know, so say you have a conflict with a family member. Your husband's family, gives you grief. So let's start with what it is that you want. You want that person to stop doing X behavior. And then start the conversation from there. But sometimes things get heated and it's hard to de-escalate when emotions are in the mix. And so again, for me, my technique for de-escalating is to begin to try to see it from not just my perspective, but from the other person's perspective. And then to stay focused on what is the target here? What is it that I'm trying to accomplish? And then even get the person to tell you what it is that they're trying to accomplish through this conversation. And then that way you can kind of figure out, how to get there. And I think when people feel like they're being heard, it automatically brings a sense of calm and they can kind of listen better and participate in the conversation. I think that I'm the person that usually comes up with solutions most of the time. And it's because I'm just solutions oriented. I just want to figure out, okay, what do we need to do so that this doesn't happen again? Or what do we need to do so that you're happy with the outcome or that I'm happy with the outcome? So I'm very solutions oriented. And I tend to be the kind of person that I can get upset about something, but as long as I know that it's resolved, it's like water under the bridge. I don't think about it again. It doesn't bother me. But now let something happen and you don't fix it, then that's an issue. So I'm always interested in just what does it take to find the resolve? And let's just plug that in and play. I think everything about the way that I was raised gave me an indication of a starting point for how I looked at conflict. I'm not really sure how my parents resolved conflict. It seemed to me that they did well because if they were upset, you could wait a little bit of time and it seemed as if things were fine after that, until they got upset again. So I think that I've always felt like there's always an ability to gain resolve. I don't know, maybe I'm an idealist and I have been told that I am, but I feel like you can resolve any problem if two people come committed to finding the answers. You can fix almost anything. It's really funny that you can start an argument here and then 30 minutes later, you're way over here somewhere. And that's usually because there's some connectivity. It's usually that there's some relation to the way that they felt about the initial issue. That same feeling's connected somewhere over there. So I find that it's not a lot of issues that people disagree on. In other words, it's not a myriad of things. There's a myriad of different situations, but they all basically are enveloped in the same different things. So that's why for me, I found in my studies that there's 7 different domains, constructs, or areas where people either get along or they disagree. And so we talk about marital beliefs, morals and values, family, finances, sex and intimacy, religion, and then how to resolve conflicts. Whatever the myriad of different situations, scenarios are, they're gonna fall within those 7 different areas. So we just don't get along across those 7 areas. They show up in so many different ways, but it's still those same things. I think when people come to see me, they're like, oh, Dr. Jacquie, yes, this happened and that happened. They're really coming because they want me to say, you're right and you're wrong. We have a tendency to want to argue to win. And I think it's through maturity and really gaining understanding that you begin to recognize, hey, you're gonna bite off your nose to spite your face. That really doesn't make any sense. When you resolve conflict, both parties win. And I think the lovely thing that I had to really recognize is that resolving conflict really means that you're malleable. You're so flexible that even though you started off with your opinion, your position was here, you're able to talk and have a meeting of the minds, and both parties move to a different position. So party A is no longer in their original position. Party B is no longer in their original position. They both move to obtain a new position that works for both of them. And that, to me, is the art of resolving conflict. To agree to disagree. I remember the first time somebody told me that, I was like, I was kind of ticked off. Well, we can just agree to disagree. I just felt like it was like one of those put down kind of statements that they weren't really being honest with. They were just saying it as just something to say. But when you really do that, agree to disagree, to me what that really looks like is not like, well, let's just agree to disagree. It looks more like, I respect your position. I don't agree with it, but I respect it. And, who knows? Maybe over time, I might move to understand it and adopt it over time. But for right now, I'm still married to my own position. And so that is really about accepting the differences that we have versus, saying that we're just going to disagree about something. I respect your opinion. You have a right to have one. I think that my partner deals with conflict differently at different times, just like I do. I tell you what, when you've been really stressed, you might be, hungry. I notice my partner doesn't do well with conflict when he's hungry. Feed the bear, and the bear does better listening and trying to figure things out. But he's kind of like hungry and angry when he doesn't get his food on time. But I think that we all come to conflict differently depending on our circumstances. Say you've had a really hard time at work. So it's like it's one more thing, one more straw. And so it's like we kind of feel ourselves buckling under it. So we might not have the patience that we need or even the focus to really lend well to resolving the different conflicts that are before us at that time. And so I think it's really good sometimes to allow people to step away as long as there's an agreement about when they're going to come back together to resolve that conflict. There were so many different areas of conflict in my marriage. As I said, I've been married 31 years. So I feel like every season or every segment of my marriage, there are different conflicts. I remember at the beginning, it was really difficult with extended family. Oh my God, my husband had some cousins. Lord have mercy. Some people just are born for trouble. They just like to start stuff, and I'm not that kind of person. I am not that girl that starts trouble or gossips or likes to talk about people behind their back. I hated that. So that was an area of conflict. And for my husband, it was difficult because he had to try to figure out how to, of course, keep everybody harmonious. He wanted to please his family, but then he also needed to please me because he had to come home to me. So it was really funny. That was the first area of conflict I said that we had to work out. And it just had to be establishing some boundaries. The other area, I think, was, I would say, around parenting. And that was maybe in the latter area of our marriage. Maybe we've been married about 15, 20 years, somewhere in there. We really didn't agree on some of our parenting techniques. My husband felt like, the boys are in their teens, I shouldn't have to tell them anything. And I'm like, but that's why they're called minors, because you still have to tell them stuff. So we disagreed on how to handle certain things. And I'm going to tell you, when you have conflict over an extended period of time that's unresolved, people's feelings get hurt. When your expectations aren't met, you become resentful. And if that resentment is unresolved, first you become disappointed, then resentful, and then you can become bitter. And so thank goodness, it didn't last too long because we still never agreed on everything about the parenting. But I think we aged out. The kids got old enough, they were about to start going off to college, so we lucked out on that. Hey, Dr. Jacquie here. I'm your how-to lady. How to do life, how to do love, and how to do you, boo. So click, like, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more to come.